Hi, I'm Tom. I'm the low bass with Stile Antico. The Divine Consolations program is a departure from what we would normally perform. We don't typically venture into the Baroque period, and unusually we are collaborating with organ and violone. The program is some of actually my favourite music, and when we had our recent residency in Aldeburgh, we had a session with the academic Stephen Rose, who gave us a lot of the background to the music. I hadn't realised that funeral music was such a big part of life back then, and people put a lot of thought into it. One of the things that we love about this music is the drama that is inherent in the texts. To have a background for these pieces gives it an emotional depth, and as soloists, it means that we can delve more into that drama. We can be more expressive in a way that we don't typically get the chance to do.
There is so much music written for funerals in the period. It was kind of probably one of the biggest reasons why music was printed or commissioned in the period, was people were writing it for funerals. Because you've got Catholic composers in it, like Lassus, who is working at Munich, which is an incredibly Catholic court. And for Catholics, and also before the Reformation, the belief is that death, when you die, you pass into purgatory. As opposed to that, you have Luther's concept of death. And Luther says there's no such thing as purgatory, there's no point in going on pilgrimages, there's no point in praying to saints. The only thing which is going to do it is your own faith. So faith alone, and faith based on scripture. So it puts an incredible onus on you as the believer to show within your own life, and particularly at your moment of death, that you have that faith which is going to get you to heaven. And I think part of the preparing for funerals was part of that. So quite often when a Lutheran person of any importance died, there would be a funeral sermon which was printed after the funeral, which kind of included everything about the funeral. It included a list of the most important people who had been there. If the music and the text struck a chord, they would be reprinted. And so a lot of these shine ones went into the hymn book for Leipzig and were kind of reused. I've got this rather fun, which we can look at, funeral procession. Now, they weren't all this big, but this would be like the whole city. This was 1632 for Moritz of Hesse, who was Schütz's original patron, a person who had sort of spotted Schütz. Like, it would be parade through the city, everyone would see it, and then behind the coffin you kind of have everyone lined up in order of rank. You have to understand Schütz's piece in this context. It's like a very prominent member of the nobility is putting absolutely everything into this piece to show that he is so pious and so faithful, but also that he is of the highest social order, and therefore he can commission Schütz, who is the most, highly regarded composer of the time. He can have this massive coffin, this enormous amount of preparation. It was partly to show your piety, partly to show your social status.
Hello, I'm Eleanor and I sing alto with Stile Antico. For this programme, we found some rather obscure German motets by composers such as Daser and Knöfel, who we'd never heard of before. We had thought that Latin music wasn't used by the Lutheran liturgy, and so Bach wouldn't have been familiar with this music. But we learnt from Stephen Rose that, in fact, Latin music was a very important part of the Lutheran service. There was a collection of 300 motets called the Florilegium Portensi 1603. This book was used every week in the Thomaskirche for the next 2 centuries. So we know that Bach would have been familiar with these sorts of motets, and he might well have drawn on them for inspiration for writing his own music.
Florilegium means collection of flowers, so it's like album. And Portensa refers to this school, this grammar school in Saxony called Schulpforter. This music has been put together, and it's been put together by this musician Bodenschatz, and this was incredibly popular anthology, mainly of Latin text and motets. It was used in almost every Lutheran school and church. So originally this was published in, well, it went through various editions, one in 1603, one in 1618, one in 1621, and it contains that Handel Ecce Quomodo piece, but also Germans who had sort of gone to Italy and learnt those styles, like Hasler, which is another one on your programme. So it was kind of in use for almost 2 centuries in Leipzig, this collection of motets, Latin motets, in the very much what one would call the Stile Antico by the sort of the 18th century. This is just an order of service in Leipzig at the end of the 17th century, so about 10 years before Bach arrives, and you can see the amount of Latin music that was still being used in the service. So here you have Kyrie or Gloria, Canticum, Zachariah, Te Deum, Antiphon, Adeste Deus. It is almost all Latin music of various types. And the particular places where you had Latin motets were at the start of a service. They would always use one from this collection, Florilegium Potenza, even into about the 1770s. But this is why Bach was still writing Kyries and Glorias, his Missa Brevis, in the 1730s and 1740s. There was a real demand for this in German towns and also in some German courts, which still, liked for Latin worship.
We've had such a great time learning about this music and performing it. So much drama, so much expression, and we really hope that you'll enjoy it as much as we have.